Hello and welcome back. We are here today to discuss House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 2. It's already shaping up to be quite the season. But with me today is Layla and Jared. Layla, will you start us off with an introduction?
Sure. I'm Layla Ghoshi. I edit Ballady Magazine and write short stories and poems. And that's all I'll say for now. I'm a Targaryen. Decided to confess that.
Nice. And Jared, what you intro and give us your preferred family?
I'm a Stark through and through. And I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and also I'm also on the Speculations podcast and many other fine podcasts like this one here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get back to you. But I think I'd have to go with Lannister. Would be my favorite family. Yeah. They're the most interesting, I think.
I like the Starks too. I mean, I like them all, but
yeah. That's what's good about it is they all have their pros and cons.
Yeah.
So this one starts off with the aftermath of the end of the first episode. Before we get to that, I was a little bit surprised that the intro didn't change.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of the same settings. That nothing changed in the settings really. So we weren't really introduced to anything new as far as that goes. Maybe that's why. Maybe if we go to another place, maybe we'll have a little bit of different intro. Who knows?
Yeah. And I didn't watch it that closely. I did watch it. It'd be interesting to know if something subtle changed. But I do like the opening. I like the tapestry idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I thought they might add something for the events of episode 1, but like you said, Jared, maybe it wasn't like that much of an altering or that big of an event. I do think it's funny though that people were so upset about a dog being kicked. And don't get me wrong, I love dogs, and I own dogs. I love dogs, but they seem to be more upset over the dog being kicked than they did a kid being beheaded.
Yeah. Yeah. The dog will always steal the scene, I think. And, I wonder too if that comes. I wonder for those who were upset, were those the ones that already kind of knew what was coming? Because if it were new fans who hadn't read the book, I could see how the beheading might be more shocking. But if you already knew that was coming, I don't remember a dog being kicked in the book, so that could be, the shocker in that regard.
Yeah, I don't remember from the books or not. Was it that specific that they actually cut off the prince's head in the book? Or was it just they killed him? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I think, maybe we can look that up real quick, but I seem to recall mention of blood. I mean, the blood and cheese.
Yeah.
Obviously. I don't remember the specifics of what it was.
That'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. Are you looking that up, Steve?
Yeah.
Are you checking that? Yeah. But I wanted to mention, we've mentioned the dog. Remember that didn't Sir Pounce have an unfortunate end as well? And there was, there was some, I think a kerfluffle over Sir Pounce as well. Remember the cat? The cat that belonged to, I'm blanking on the name. There's Joffrey.
In the Game of Thrones show.
Right.
Yeah.
Time. How could I have forgotten his name? But Joffrey's younger brother had a cat named Sir Pounce.
Tommen? Is that it?
Oh,
Yeah,
Tommen.
okay.
Thank you. So, but we didn't see any ill-fated things happen to Sir Pounce, but I think it was hinted at least in the books. And
Yeah.
And all I remember about that was he wouldn't, the cat would not perform to expectation, while they were trying to film the scene.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe it's
at
just.
least he wasn't kicked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just too obvious to be upset over the beheading of the prince. I mean, because it was pretty pretty gruesome.
It was.
But that's definitely an upsetting thing. I think the dog was just the icing on the cake, maybe, as far as bad things happening in the first episode.
Yeah. I think what stuck with me about that scene, I know that's back in episode 1, was how, when they asked, here I go without my name again, but when they asked the mom, when they asked the queen, what, which one was the boy, she pointed to him right away. And I know that, just talk is that she was already aware through her premonition of what was going to happen. So it was just kind of like she's just going to go with it. But that still hit me funny, I guess. But then not knowing that she is neurodivergent and maybe, that was her estimate of the equation of the situation. She had already had a premonition. She knew this is how it's going to go. So she's going to, play the role because she knows it's going to happen anyway. I'd say that to me, I felt was more shocking than what actually happened to the child.
Interesting. Notice how
that's Helena, who's the name?
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
Oh, Helena. Thank you.
Steve, you mentioned last week about how they got into the castle so easily, and I noticed that right in the beginning of this episode here, there's this panicked roundup of all the servants, and it reminded me of that fact that, like, how did these guys get in here? So of course now they're blaming all the servants, and they're searching amongst them, and for the who would have saw something, who would have let them in, and they did catch them. They did catch blood eventually, and
yeah, they did.
Yeah, and he sang like a bird, right? From what I remember. And that was all. And you saw a little trace there of how mad the king will get, and I'm wondering if that's not just angry, like just bordering a little bit on a touch of madness there, and how much this is going to drive him in that direction. And I thought it was just nice little because they just gave us little pieces here and there, little touches of character here and there, and on a lot of different people in the situation. I thought it was pretty well done.
Yeah, I agree. Now, didn't we see him hanged along the wall?
Yeah, eventually, yeah, eventually.
And again, the poor dog, that was underneath whoever was hanged.
Jeez.
But there's some more existential blame. I think first is Maegor for creating these tunnels, and it seems their importance lagged, as being just something that might be useful, but also is a sense of danger. And I found it curious, the king guard was not aware of them. So, and again, not remembering if during Maegor's time, if they had become aware of that as well. So, yeah. And as for Aegon, I really loved his performance in this.
Sure.
Because you're right about the madness and just the fact that he's just not mature enough, you know. But then I got nostalgic because having read all of the Song of Ice and Fire a couple of times and all of that went on, just kind of seeing it, and seeing just the interactions of the different characters and how these are precursors to the characters we first met. I think it's being done very well, where we get a sense of, okay, can kind of see how some of these problems continue generationally after this point.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's interesting because we got a dismissal of the hand in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
And unlike in the future, he didn't die right away.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. But I like his how you saw when they had the funeral and how you saw the spin machine going, in action, in how they had to present to the people and stuff like that. And it was like kind of the hand's a little media push there to represent it in the best possible light for the royal family as possible. And I really liked how that came about and how he tried to pull that off. And then
war propaganda. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then of course the king kind of, in his mad way, messed that up by hanging the whole Rat Catchers Guild. So you saw how they were at odds with each other already, and how just it was just cool how the characters made these decisions, in the heat of the moments on the king's part, and also how everyone's trying to traipse around what they think how they think he's going to react, and trying to plan around it, and how it really didn't work out for him. But even with his dismissal, he's still trying to talk to Allison, his daughter, guide her in ways to try to get a reign on Aegon. And I really liked this episode for a lot of character building. I thought it was really cool.
I think even just Aegon, seeing him from episode 1, even last season and episode 1, just he kind of seemed like a kid. He kind of seemed like very, very naive, kind of going through the motions, kind of goofy. A little bit of Joffrey, like a pinch of Joffrey. That kind of, what would you expect for the kid giving him this kind of power? But I think after the beheading, and it does happen in the book. I looked.
Okay, cool.
Looked up to verify. So yeah, it does happen in the book too. But seeing the difference of his trajectory, his life, and like you said, the whole family tree. This event changed the course of history for the family and for Westeros. I mean. And him especially, though, you see the difference in him pretty swiftly. The way that he, obviously, it's a major thing for him. But seeing the performance and just the way all those little nuances, seeing the difference after that event, that was really great.
Mm-hmm. Something I noticed in comparison, Otto Hightower has shades of the Lannister hand. He's the hand to his grandson. His grandson is immature and petulant. But the difference is where's my brain going today with names?
You mean Tywin Lannister?
Tywin, thank you. Tywin Lannister, I think was a little more savvy. Like, well, let's see what Otto does, though. Yeah. But, I always felt like Tywin will always find a way to hang on to that power. And I haven't quite seen that in Otto yet, but maybe we'll see that.
Yeah, well, I think Tywin was in a better position of power to start with than Otto was.
Yeah.
Otto, I think, has some, he was coming from a not quite as a prominent position as Tywin was. And so he's got a little making up to do if he's going to get more influence in the future. And he was, I don't know, I thought he did pretty good for what he had. I don't think, I wouldn't, I mean, it's obviously going to be a mistake that he got dismissed. I think that's just going to make things worse with this coming war and stuff like that. Because you don't dismiss somebody with that kind of experience without paying the price.
Right.
But we'll see. It may definitely piques my interest. I can't wait to see what happens. So it's great.
Yeah.
Well, Tywin too was feared and respected in ways that Otto was never. Tywin was. You just don't mess with Tywin. It's one of those people you just, unless you want a quick grave, he won't. But Otto, I think, like you mentioned, Jared, he was still coaching Alicent after he was dismissed. Was that because? Do both of you think it was because he cares about her, or because he cares about the power that potentially could come with it for him? Because I think it more has to do with power than it does him caring for her or the family. It's more about holding on to as much power as he possibly can.
I agree. It is all about power, I think. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put his daughter in that situation in the first place, I really believe. He did shout that he loves his grandson, but his actions are not on behalf of his grandson so much as on behalf of really the realm. But I don't know. What do you all think about that?
If you go with the theme of this show and Game of Thrones, everything's about countering power, getting in position for power. But I think the characters are nuanced enough to be multifaceted in a way that they have other motivations as well, besides that overdriving theme of power. And I think Otto truly cares for his immediate family members, and I think he's actually cares about the realm itself as well. On all kinds of different levels. I think I see that, and I see that in some of the other characters too, that are also struggling for power. I think on the other side, I think Daemon's a nut job who wants power, but I think Rhaenyra is definitely thinks she's got what it takes to do the best for the realm, for the kingdom. And but they all want power, but I think Rhaenyra has that, those multifaceted motives that she thinks she's the best one to be in the best position to rule the realm, and and for whatever reasons, and some of it's familial. She's doesn't want to lose that connection with her father, who just died, and who was the king, and so. Yeah. It's just a lot of depth to these characters.
I agree, because the other thing that Otto said, when Aegon said, well, he made me king, Otto said, do you believe that? Like, do you really believe that? So it kind of hinted that Otto really might believe that Rhaenyra should be queen, but yet it's like he's bought the ticket on the train he's on with his daughter and grandson. So I found that just very interesting.
Yeah.
that he could realize what's really happened, but he's just going to go with, what he's got in front of him. And yeah, but that's a case of maybe not working for the realm. I think all of them, if they would just make that one right decision, to do what's best for all, whatever that ends up being, they would be the one true monarch.
Yeah. But I think they're doing a good job of showing us that that's not easy to do, to make that one right decision. These characters have a lot of faults, and they have and they let their feelings overtake them, and making that right decision isn't easy because sometimes you just don't know what the right decision is going to be, and sometimes even if you do, you have a lot of other factors to think about, and they might interfere with that right decision.
And I think Aegon really did love his son.
Yep.
And he could be put out because he was also his heir. But I can see that emotional overtone shading everything, from now on in the show. I mean, that's how I will factor it into the show. But yeah, let's see what happens. But, his mom found him crying, and she still left him, did not comfort him. I think that shows something about their relationship too.
Yeah. That's I did do a double take when she just left the room, and I was like, oh, okay, Jeez, tough love.
She's more worried about Helena. She cried for Helena, for what, the death had done to her daughter.
Yeah. And on the other side, I found it very interesting that Rhaenyra's son volunteered to go on his dragon to scout King's Landing, and she said no, and then she sends Daemon's daughter to do that very same thing. And I was like, oh, what's up with that? She trusts Daemon's daughter to do the scouting, or is she willing to risk Daemon's daughter to do the scouting? And I was like trying to figure out what her motivations were concerning that.
I wonder, that's a good one. I think because it can be interpreted so many different ways.
Yeah.
What it is on the surface, she seemed to say, I really believe in you. I trust you. I'm investing my trust in you. I also wondered if she was afraid of losing the other son.
Very good.
But the thing is, Daemon he did ignore his daughter. I mean, when they passed in the hall, she stopped to say something to him, and he just kind of looked at her and kept going. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's got a tough situation there, but I don't think it's really about her per se as much as everyone's inwardly focused. And right now, Rhaenyra is grieving too. So you actually have two people. The two contenders for the throne now are both grieving.
Yeah, and that's Daemon's fault too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't take Rhaenyra very long to figure out that he was responsible for it. She just kind of stares at him, and she knows something's wrong.
Yeah, well, he's got that smug look the whole time. They're in the council talking about the events that happen. He's not saying anything when mostly, other times he's been so outspoken, and he's just sitting there not saying anything. He's got that smirk on his face that you just want to wipe off, and everybody else is outraged and they're talking this and talking that, and as soon as they're done, and it's she's smart. She figured it out.
So what do you think his internal conflicts are? Because Rhaenyra touched on some things, such as he always felt he would have been a better king, but then he comes back and says, I put a crown on your head, Rhaenyra, and he also has put a crown on his brother's head. But yet, if anybody could, look at something objectively, I think it's Daemon. I don't say that in a way of praise, but frankly, he's not grieving his kid, or he's not. He doesn't show affection for his kids the way Rhaenyra and Aegon have shown, before and after showed affection. Because Aegon did show affection to his son, before. So it could be that Daemon is the one true king.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just kidding. But I mean, in terms of being non-emotional, but does he make good decisions? I guess not.
Is that a new hashtag? Daemon, the one true king?
Yeah.
I mean, from a perspective of a king, does he make the kind of decisions that he would rule? I mean, in this world, I mean, he's despicable, but
he is despicable. But he, go ahead.
I think he comes from a position of might makes right, and I think deep down he would want that praise and adulation of being a king, but he is self-destructive in a lot of ways, and I think deep down he kind of knows that, and so putting a crown on somebody else's head kind of prevents that self-destruction coming forward, I think. And maybe I'm reading into it, but that's kind of the feeling I'm getting, that he likes having the actually more power to do things when you're not king, because you don't have to have that weight of responsibility on you. But I still think he thinks he's better than anybody he put a crown on. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And there's also that sense of I put the crown on your head. Right. He had that power and discipline. But this conversation reminds me that George R.R. Martin has a theme of second sons too. And second sons having different issues, whether it was, the Starks, and the older son dies, the younger son marries someone, marries the older son's intended bride, and then there's Tyrion, the second son, and then there's the whole second son, mercenaries. So he does kind of have this thing where they're not out in the shadows. They've got something going on, and Aemon too, for that matter. So
he's pretty broken, Aemon.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I think Aemon is pretty broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I believe in the show, I do believe the way they're portraying it, that he accidentally, caused the death of the younger son, Rhaenyra's younger son. I think that plays pretty well.
Yeah.
I think in the book it's left a little more up in the air. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
remember there was a little bit of controversy over making the choice to show him as like saying something like, "Uh-oh," or "no," or whatever he said.
yeah. Well, the
Uh,
show plays up drama more than the book did, because the book was kind of a pseudo-historical viewpoint, where the show's trying to
yeah,
be more dramatic with the events they
yeah,
show and stuff like that, and the characterizations. So that makes perfect sense for the sake of the show.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that line by Aegon. I wish to spill blood, not ink.
Mhm.
That was just like the perfect line for a hot-headed young king,
I actually like him better than Joffrey. I mean, I see all of his faults.
not a high bar.
as a character, right?
Uh, I see all of his fault, but Joffrey was constantly looking for a mess to get into, and I feel like Aegon is more reactive. He wasn't, I mean, he wants to defend the crown, but he's not constantly, doing like heinous things. Now he taunts people because, like in the meeting they were in,
Yeah.
he allowed his son to like bother who is that I forget his name too, but the
Oh yeah, the advisor. I forget his name.
advisor. Yeah, he allowed his son to kind of bother and mess with him, but that's a far cry from the type of stuff that Joffrey would do. So.
Yeah, I think Steve
Was it Tylan?
Tylan, is it Tylan? Yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
Tylan?
Steve and I were talking about that last week, where the king's relationship with his son,
Yeah.
where really the king just wants to be a kid with with his kid. He wants to be a kid
Yeah.
with him, and I thought that was well played. And then it just makes all the events of the second episode here that much more relevant, I think, as far as his behavior goes.
And we actually even see care expressed from Rhaenyra for Helena after realizing her child has died. So I like that too, that there's the love for the children, and then from Rhaenyra's side, there's definitely a care about what happened. I don't think she would have had the same reaction if it had been Aemond. I think she would have been very happy about that.
Yeah, well, she's the one that said she wanted his head.
Yeah.
After her son died, and and Daemon, of course, took that excuse to do what he did. But it was interesting how last week, Steve, you mentioned how easily blood and cheese got into the royal area there, and it was also similarly easy for the brother to walk into the other keep, just pretending he was his brother because they're twins. But it mirrored that simpleness of infiltrating, getting in, and he walks right in and attacks her. And I thought that was just interesting how that all played out. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Do you think there's some even hubris there in terms of they're so used to being powerful with their dragons, it's not even occurring to them that someone could just walk in or, could skulk about the castle. And so it's like they're, all their shield is like toward each other. They're thinking about each other, and they're also kind of thinking that otherwise, as long as that antagonist is not around, as long as Aegon is not around Rhaenyra and vice versa, they pretty much just sort of have this hubris that I'm here, I'm powerful. And it was easy to, do what they did. So Blood and Cheese and Eric.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I mean, in the first season, they were one house, basically.
yeah.
And, there wasn't, they weren't against each other. And so there is something to that, I think. I mean, in both cases, it wasn't simply a case of just walking in. I mean, Daemon did bribe the guards in.
Oh, that's true.
He did bribe them to let the Ratkitcher Guild guys in, but once they were in, they kind of wandered around at will. Of course, the other guy pretended he was his brother, and he did dress in the same armor they were dressing in order to do that, to pull that off. But yeah, there definitely isn't a high level of, like you said, a concern about infiltration. There should be now. I hope we see some ramifications due to both of these incidences, and see how that plays out in the future.
I just wanted to mention too the Eric situation and scene. I was so glad that was kept and acted out, because to me that is one of Martin's classic memorable scenes, because even at the end the brothers are saying they love each other, but duty and loyalty and whatever else both cast them apart, but yet at the end they die together. And it reminded me of somewhere Jaime Lannister says, we came in this world together, we go out together, in terms of twins. So again, kind of that same idea that we do all these horrible things to each other, but at the same time we love each other and we're going out together just like we came in. I like those like repeated types of themes. I think you get something out of them in different ways, each time.
Yeah. And he commits seppuku, basically.
Yeah. That's
I was
true.
just like, oh no.
Couldn't live without him. Yeah. And he probably couldn't live with knowing that he did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also thought maybe how would they ever confirm that that's him? Would they ever really trust him again? Because they look identical.
That's right. That's a great point.
He's kind of screwed away. How can you prove you are who you are? I mean,
they could just give him some money and send him off to Pentos and, be done with it.
live out his days.
Yeah. In honor of the good Eric.
So I have a little bit of I have a hot take about Criston Cole. I know he seems to be the most hated character in the show now, and I don't know why. I kind of see him as like a tragic character. I think he's been wrapped up in this whole mess by these really powerful people, and he's just he's had his brain scrambled, and I think he's in this mess, and he's trying to kind of navigate his way through it, but I think he's way out of his depth, and he's just kind of a mess. But I don't know. I think he just keeps digging himself in deeper and deeper.
I think that's a great point. I really do, because I think where some of the ire is coming from is after Rhaenyra told him she didn't want to run off with him. And he was very idealistic. He's like, hey, let's throw all this out and let's just run off together. She said no. He took that bitterly. So people saw him as because they're sympathizing with Rhaenyra, and so they saw him as kind of like having sour grapes, and I think that's where that anger about him comes from, because now it's like he switched sides. So it didn't work out with Rhaenyra, and now he's sleeping with the queen. So I think that's where that's coming from. But
Oh.
Again, the same thing. He truly, idealistically, felt that Rhaenyra would leave with him. And I think he's in some way that disappointment is part of his personality now. So in that way, I do see him as like a tragic figure, a sympathetic tragic figure too. Because yeah, what's he going to do now?
Yeah.
He's in this great. He's got one of the best jobs in the world, and in the Game of Thrones world, on many levels there. But he's like the the head of the King's Guard and all that. I mean, that's a great place to be, considering where he
It's a
came
position
from.
of prestige, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I agree with you, Steve, actually, on that.
From what
Yeah.
I hear, but I read an article earlier that he had to disable comments on his Instagram account because people were coming after him on his personal Instagram account.
Jeez.
It's wild.
I never understand that, going after an actor for a role.
It's wild.
Yeah. They did that to the actress for Cersei Lannister too back in the day. But I think now she's really well regarded by those same fans probably. So, but yeah, I think that's ridiculous too. And but he should take it as a compliment because it means he's playing the role really well. But I do think it's important for people to recognize that nuance. Steve, that you brought up. He's not just being, sneaky and antagonistic for no reason. I think the kickoff was the letdown by Rhaenyra.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that. I kind of forgot about that because that was season 1, right? And yeah, I kind of forgot about that. It's hard not to just think of him now as the Queen's boy toy, but the who's trying to like prove himself by sending this twin off on a suicide mission, basically. And so it's hard to not to think of that without you're right, you got to take into context everything that happened in the first season and see where he's coming from.
And just how the family treats each other, because really, well, first of all, Rhaenyra was not in a good place because she was in a marriage that, she really couldn't consummate. And so she had her dalliances or whatever, but that is a form of power, misuse of power by Rhaenyra. But you could say, well, she was young, et cetera, whatever, So I don't know. It's more that Criston Cole sees how the whole family operates now. And he is actually one of them in a way, because they all have their, little petty actions against each other.
Yeah, he's kind of I think he's kind of being used by them too, in a way.
Yeah.
And I know he was laughed at with the whole plan to have Eric go, but it almost worked.
Close.
Right.
It almost worked.
Yeah. Almost, yeah.
That's right. And at the very least, Rhaenyra has lost a loyal guard.
Yeah, true.
Someone that was willing to die for her, she lost. She lost him. So everything gets magnified. It's like every step they take on either side becomes just exponentially magnified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the little shots of characters we get. We got a short little section with Hugh the blacksmith again. So I was like, and I thought it was just a really nice job of his showing his little shop there in the family life or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
because that's going to come around again at some point, and there's going to be
Yeah.
something that he's going to. I don't know if he's going to lead commoners in some sort of protest or some sort of, or what's going to result from this. Because it seems like he hasn't been paid yet from the crown for his work, and so I'm looking forward. I'm glad to keep introducing him into the storyline because I want to see where that goes with the common folks, and and we also got another look, individual look at Ellen, the Queen, and how she's dealing with the aftermath of her son's death and what she had to go through during the funeral, but then and also later on they had a little nice little scene with her as well. So I think they're spreading the love, and I think they're doing it very, very well in order just to give us reminders of these characters, keep them in the loop, and hopefully foreshadow stuff coming down the pipeline here.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. You've reminded me to... Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Leigh, go ahead.
Yeah, just mentioning Helena again, how she and Aegon passed on the stairs. Do you remember that part? Yeah.
That was actually very poignant, I thought. Yeah,
it was poignant. It was like there's nothing... They don't have the type of relationship where they could console each other. And it's like, in a way, there's nothing they can say, And then they both, Aegon just keeps going. Yeah.
I think the performance, Rhaenyra's, Emma Darcy plays Queen Rhaenyra, but I think just an excellent, just the emotion, I've been impressed with the performance there.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
Yeah. I will confess, of course, I think I was propagandized by the original show, but I did wonder how will they really be able to become the Hightowers and the Targaryens and the Starks, and will all of these characters come into these themes, and I think it's really working. I think it really, I was happy with the very first episode of the first season. I felt like, okay, we do have something here, but yeah, what I like about now we knew Daemon. What is his name? Matt
Smith.
Yeah.
Matt. Yeah, I've always liked Matt Smith. I liked him. I liked him in other shows. But yeah, I wasn't quite sure how this was gonna go. But I think he's playing it wonderfully too. Yeah.
All the way around, really. I think, Jared, we talked about this last week. All the way around, it's pretty solid. I mean, there's no one that takes you out of the, no one who breaks an immersion who was terrible. So
yeah,
it's hard with the cast this big to not have a weak link that stands out. So everyone's doing a really good job.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah. The only other thing I can think of was Rhaenyra letting the White Worm go.
Yeah. Having a little bit of sympathy for her.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder, did she warn someone after she saw Eric walking up into the keep? Did she warn someone, or did she keep going?
Because
I got the impression she did, because someone came in the door that would not have necessarily heard what was going on in Rhaenyra's room.
Is that why his brother got there so fast? Like, is that? Yeah.
Maybe.
It could be.
Yeah, they hinted at that. That now that I think about it, that it seems that might have been the case. Yeah.
And I did like the shared moment she had with the White Worm, where they were both talking about Daemon, and they just give each other this look, and I was like, I think that's what convinced Rhaenyra, to say, okay, I'm going to honor his word. I know how he is,
Mm.
Um, so yeah, very good.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Jared, anything else you could think of?
Nope. I'm just yeah, I'm looking forward to the next show. I hope they continue on with some of those themes we were talking about, and some in some of the directions that we mentioned. I'm hoping that they develop those things more, and it's cool. I think I'm more excited about this season than I was the first one, and I think they're settling in and finding their you know they got a good grip on what's going on here,
Yeah.
and it seems the plan is solid so far. So I'm excited for it.
And what's really great is, as we've alluded to some, in the history books such as Fire and Blood, you get the surface story. That there was a contest between, they're both contesting who deserved the crown and so on. But then just to see the gnashing of teeth and the midnight crying sessions and just all of this stuff happening, whether it's Aegon or Rhaenyra or just everything. That's what just makes it fascinating to me, just thinking how, it might have been a blip in history, but it was a significant one, first of all, in this story, but the heartache behind it all,
Right.
really fascinating.
I really love seeing the aftermath of these big events. I think that's more interesting than the events themselves. I've seen the fallout and how things change after. So,
right.
This series has always been really good about that, about showing what happened, what's the result of this event, what happens after this.
Yeah, and that's not always easy to do, without falling into like maudlin cliche of some sort. It's not always easy to pull that off, and they did a great job so far.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah. Well, until next week, Layla, where can people find you?
On Twitter, mostly at El Goshi.
Yes. And Jared?
You can find me on YouTube at the Fantasy Thinker channel, and I'm all over page chewing a lot, so you can find me there.
Nice. And of course, you can find me on Page Chewing or Speculative Speculations or any other podcast down in the links below. So we'll see everyone next week. And if you have any thoughts, there is a send message link down below. So if you want to send us a message or a question, feel free and we'll answer them next week. Until then, we'll talk to everyone soon.